was thinking about trying to get back into Gwent. And for those of you who missed the news, Gwent had its big redesign this past week. Just a complete and utter tear down and rebuild. All the cards have been altered, all the rules have been changed. Basically, everything that people have been doing over the beta of Gwent is completely wiped, essentially. Essentially, you spent the last 2 years playing a game that is never coming out, I guess in a matter of speaking, because it's all different now. And it's gotten a lot of people kind of, again, debating whether or not that was a good thing. And it's a very interesting argument, especially when we talk about these lifestyle or games as a service titles, that what happens when that massive change goes through? Like, for me, I've been feeling like almost disheartened to jump back into Gwent, because I played it for a good like 4 or 5 months when like this was about like a year or so ago, and I was following like big streamers of it. I was watching them play games, and now it just feels like, everything that I just did, oh well, you played it, but now you'll never play it again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's actually an excellent topic to do, because it's not so much like when that happens, but should that ever happen? Because Gwent became an esport essentially, right? And so do the pro. What happens to the pros when the whole game gets completely redone? That's just such a weird thing. Why not just make a new game, call it Gwent 2 or Gwent the Reckoning? It seems like you're doing your fans a disservice by taking these mechanics that they all learned throughout, like dedicating out like dozens of hours, if not hundreds, to learning the game and getting good at it, and then you pull the rug out from under them. Even if it's not as grand a change as I'm imagining in my head, that's still like taking someone's keyboard that they're used to using and then just like changing the keys a little bit, like replacing the R and the K. Like, that's enough to really throw someone off.
Yeah. And with Gwen, I know one of the big streamers, I think his name is Life Coach, I think he either won the finals or is like considered one of the top players, has been kind of disheartened to get back into Gwent with the, and when we're talking about Homecoming, that's kind of the big name for the update to it. And yet, again, as you said, Rob, like, and I know we've talked about this before when it came to esports in general, like, when you're trying to sustain and grow these games, like, imagine, again, like, if tomorrow the NFL announces that we're going to make all teams only be, 6 players on the field instead of whatever it is now. Again, you can see my expertise at football here.
That would be 11.
Okay.
Just
thank you, Rob.
Throw that out there. Yeah.
There. Rob's he's the sports guy on here. But again, like, if you don't see this in traditional sports or in anything like that these rules become established and then that's set for better or worse. There are people who don't like watching American football. I'm one of them. I'm sure there's a lot of us out there. But there are plenty of people who do. And changing football like that, would it bring people like me in? I don't know. But it would certainly throw off all those people who are fans. And again, when we take this to the video game side, we've talked about this before with that risk of trying to keep a game going and growing. For instance, like Hearthstone. Oh, thank you, Draken. Hearthstone has had its ups and downs, but it has kept itself relatively that kind of same structure. Yes, there are new cards, there are new rules, but it's not a case that if I decide to go back to Hearthstone that it's a completely brand new game design. And again, it raises that point, especially when we talk about a game that's been in beta. I mean, Gwent, if I can find it, when did Gwent first go into beta? Because I know it has been in development for quite some time. Looks like early news was back in 2016. So if we go by that, Gwent's been in development, and it's been offering people a chance to play the game now for about 2 years. Now, they've had redesigns of cards, like, just like with any other kind of CCG game. but it still kept the same basic feel to it. They may have changed how weather works or how certain cards will buff or debuff, but Homecoming just removes everything. For instance, one of my favorite decks was a spy deck for Nilfgaard, which a lot of people felt was overpowered or it had a little too much control. There are no more spies in Gwent, or at least the vast majority of spies have been removed. Weather now does things differently. The 3 rogues that used to be in Gwent are now down to 2. And one of the things I think a lot of people have argued about, and this is where if we really want to, I could spend like 40 minutes discussing Gwent's rules, is that they change how card advantage works. One of the things that set Gwent apart from other CCGs was that your hand only grows by, you start with 10 cards and you get 2 in round 2 and then 1 in round 3. So there is strategy in knowing how much to commit in a single round. With the Homecoming, now everybody gets 3 cards for free per round. So if you go down to 4 cards on round 1, you will guarantee have 10 cards back in your hand by the start of round 3. And that changes a lot of the dynamics of Gwent. It could arguably say it changes how you play that game entirely. And again, there are people who will say that's good. You know, we shake things up, it's a brand new game. But then there's an argument as to, is this brand new game something that people want to play?
Yeah, and I think it's not even about, is it a brand new game that people want to play, but you really do. You have this audience that's already there, that's dedicated a lot of time to your game. Are you going to get new players? Is going after new players, should that be your goal? Because when you have a huge dedicated following, that will tend to get players in if indeed you keep those players happy. So if you're running the chance of pissing off some of your fan base, that's like not pissing them off, because that always happens.
Yeah,
fan bases always get pissed off. That's kind of how it works. But if you piss them off so much that, or maybe not pissing them off but disheartening them, that's probably the greater sin there. You don't want your fan base to lose interest, like, and through your own actions. Like losing interest due to inaction is one thing, but losing interest due to someone actually just actively completely transforming the thing that they actually love.
Yeah,
I think that's messed up.
And it's one of those things where it's hard to know exactly if this was CD Projekt Red's plan this whole time. Obviously, I don't think it was. I don't think anybody, again, planned to do a complete redesign of a game after a year or two of development. But a lot of people have argued that, and again, this is the point, this is a very interesting point. We'll get your thoughts on this, Rob, and the people watching as well. That a lot of arguments about Gwent was that while it was a very unique game, it was also a very limited game. Because of the lack of RNG, because of how the rounds played out, it became a case of, essentially, I have a strategy. Do you have the counter? No, I win. Do you have the counter? Yes, I lose. And a lot of people found high-level play to get very mechanical on that front. I was watching, like, about 2 weeks ago, they had the final Gwent Masters. That's their kind of esports grand tournament. This was going to be the final one pre-Homecoming. So this is basically the apex of Gwent's old design. And a lot of the people, the commentators, were talking about how, oh, so-and-so has this card. Well, if they don't draw this, then there's no way they're going to win. And there's that argument in place as to just how limited Gwent was in that aspect. I know we've had a few guests on who talked about CCG design on that front, like with Magic the Gathering, how they've had to be really careful with how far they push things without breaking everything else around them. So the question that I want to ask everyone is, when it comes to like a CCG or any kind of design like this, like, do you feel that when it gets that mechanical of play, that it needs to be broken? Or is this a case of maybe the developers kind of took a power drill to hammer in a nail and they just went over what they needed to do?
I'd argue the latter. I mean, I know I'm someone who, when I'm working on something in particular, I love iterating on it. And from version 1.0 to version 2.0, it might be very different. But there's enough like gray area along the way where you don't notice it so much. But if I were to give you version 1 and version 2 separately, you might say, well, what the hell just happened? Those kinds of games, certainly, Hearthstone, Dota, League of Legends, all that stuff, they change like dramatically, but very incrementally. So like the balance may shift, the meta may shift over time. Just like between 2017 and 2018, the balance may shift greatly. But within that time period, it's just in inches, right? It seems like to do it all at once is a tough kind of call to make.
There's a growth. There's like an actual curve you can see of this game going from 1.0 to 1.1 to 1.2. Like, again, as you said, you can track that development. You can see that, oh, so-and-so was too overpowered, we need to change this. But the foundation or the DNA stays the same. But again, with something like Homecoming, it's just basically saying, here's our foundation, it's gone. We're back again at square one after 2 years of development. And again, it's one of those very weird points. Now again, Gwent was a free-to-play game. You could obviously spend money to buy cards or the kegs, but this wasn't a case of somebody spending $60 on a game and then 2 years later found it to be a completely different experience. But with something like Gwent or any kind of lifestyle game, again, like, how much should developers, once you've established a foundation, does that kind of lock you into development going forward? Or can you, justifiably say, you know what, I'm going to restart this entire game. Everything is now brand new.
It's interesting, right? I do wonder about the mentality behind the scenes. Like, if a designer came onto it who was new to the team or just had a lot of ideas as to how it should have gone and then implemented them all at once. It's a tough thing. I would like to hear their side, and I'd certainly like to hear what you think after trying it, because you have a strong history with Gwent, and being able to identify the changes for someone who's very familiar is going to be a lot easier than someone who's not familiar, like myself. When did this free-to-play rubbish start? That's a good question. That's another topic for another time. Yeah, I'm interested to know how badly it impacts someone who knows the game. Certainly, there's talking about it. It just makes me seem like even I don't want to try it now because I feel like I wouldn't be playing Gwent anymore. Maybe start with a new mode within the game, try our new Homecoming version, and seeing what people think while maintaining the core game at the same time. I don't know. I mean, there's obviously a mentality that happened, some thought process that happened in the company that I can't picture, but something happened and it made sense to them at the time. So hopefully it works out.
There have been rumors that this has been their way of trying to make Gwent more quote-unquote mobile-friendly, which the original Gwent was not because of the 3 rows and the size of the cards. But again, it raises that point, as we've said, how much do you change something before it's not the same game anymore, not the same experience? And I think the developers have actually gone backwards in a few areas, especially when trying to learn the game. Because again, Gwent, you have the 5 different factions, then you have the different leaders, which each leader has kind of its own, essentially its own kind of meta or card strategy. And there's just nothing in the game right now that tries to teach those intricacies. For instance, a few months ago, they had challenges that you were forced to play as a various different factions, and it gave you a chance to kind of try them out in a safe area and be rewarded for it. that's not in the game anymore. I'm really surprised they took that feature out. Because it's basically saying, we want you to start at 0 again, but we're not going to tell you how everything works now.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, it's a shame and it's not. I need more information. It just sounds like a slap in the face. That's what it sounds like on the surface. So the reality of it may change over time once people have a chance to play it, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, it's still too early to tell. I mean, the update just came out about a week ago, maybe less by the time we're recording this piece. So, again, we don't know what's going to happen, and unfortunately, neither of us work at CD Projekt Red, so we can't exactly go talk to them about it. I would love to have them on. Who knows if we'll ever get them, though, considering how busy they are. But I think we will begin to wrap things up here because we are approaching an hour and a half for our live show. So, other than that, I can't think of anything like final thoughts on this. Again, it's still too early to tell, but I just don't know if this is going to be, the proper way to have done Gwent. But again, that takes us into theory crafting, which that can be 5 to 10 hours easily. So I think we're going to wrap things up here. I guess, Rob, do you have any final thoughts on the matter?
No, I mean, when it comes to design and iterating on a game, I feel like be careful. Your fans are all you got, and don't push them away. I mean, there's, like I said, there's a difference between angering a fan and blatantly shoving them away, because fans get angry, they're very passionate, but they'll continue to come back. You don't want them to not.
Alright, but I think with that, we will say goodnight for this week's live show. So for those of you watching this live, tune in later tonight for probably a play of the original Condemned. We'll see if we can find a few more horror games to squeeze in between now and Halloween. I guess, Rob, are you going to be going trick-or-treating or dressing up for Halloween this year?
No, I still have to figure out if they do trick-or-treating here at the apartment complex I moved to, so whether or not to buy candy is the big question.
We'll see. I don't know if I have any costumes around here, so I know everybody's going to see me dressing up in the next few days. But for those of you new, thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to watch this show ad-free and uncut, be sure to check out patreon.com/GWBycer. We have our Discord channel linked down below where we hang out and talk about game design. And for you, Rob, are you doing any more regular streaming?
No, my time is so irregular these days that I'm just kind of trying to play games on a decent period, but no, I'm just kind of out there. I'm legitimately going to keep trying to get back to Discord and popping my head in every now and again. So hopefully, knock on wood, you guys will be able to see me on there.
All right. Well, I guess with that said, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back around 3:30 next Sunday for another live chat, and we'll be all around the Discord channel as well. I'll be sure to let you guys know more news about the book as we get closer, as well as if the second series goes through. But until next time, have a great night, and I'll see you guys for our next stream. Until then, take care.